What if the answers you've been searching for have been inside you all along? Welcome to Insights with Purpose, the power of inner wisdom. We're Hemali and Sheila, two friends on two continents, having the conversations that bring us closer to the truth of who we are. No scripts, just real talk. Pull up a seat.
Today, we're talking about the people in your life and what they're actually showing you about you. Every trigger, every resentment, every pattern that keeps repeating with different people in the same situation. What if it was never about them? We're getting into the string of failed relationships that taught us we didn't know ourselves, the blow ups that came from your years of silence, the guides who said you keep experiencing abandonment because you keep abandoning yourself. And the moment you realize that meeting your own needs first isn't selfish, it's the prerequisite for every real relationship you'll ever have. If you've ever wondered why the same thing keeps happening with different people, stay with us. By the end, you might realize the mirror was never the problem, it was the invitation. This, for me, is such a big topic to look into the mirror. What does it mean? And particularly relationship. And what comes to mind, the first thing that comes to mind when I was doing the healing or when I had just started, my alarm was set to a song, Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson. And I would wake up to that song. But not only that, for some reason, it was stuck in the car. So no matter what we would play, it would loop back to that song when I'm driving around, picking kids up, dropping them, or anywhere I would go. And so that just brings back, it was a reminder for myself to keep looking at the mirror, ask questions. If you want to make a change, look at yourself and not outside. And I think it started with, in terms of asking myself, what is relationship with myself? Because I used to say, I love you more than I love myself. And that's such a profound sentence if you look at it. And then I stopped for a second. That really made me stop. And why? Why do I love myself less than anyone else? And that was a big awakening moment for me to question that, to look into that. Like where that love for myself was lost, or whether I even had that, right? I think all this thing that you see in front of you in the mirror, what reflects back to you, somewhere I have found through all this work that it stems somewhere from childhood. And not so that you can, and this happens a lot when people talk about, when I talk to a loved one and or my husband, and I say, let's look at this in a way and let's go back to the childhood. And sometimes he does not want to see it. Well, my childhood was great. I had all the love I wanted, I needed, and I had everything I wanted. And it's not like we're bashing anyone. I love my parents. But again, even as a parent, I know I have so many shortcomings, and I know I've given enough material for my kids to get therapy and healing done. So we all have that good, bad, and ugly in us. And so just going back and not condoning or not, just looking at that is the person or they are like that, but what they did in that moment was wrong. To see that as it is, the truth of it in our perspective, right? Someone else might see it differently, and that's okay. But for us to heal certain things. So I want to ask you, is how did it begin for you? How this whole thing in terms of mirror or seeing
Hmm.
relationship in mirror?
The way you began with that reflection of that song is so important because when you say relationship, immediately that conjures up a visual of an external person, right? A friend, a romantic partner, a family member. But I learned along the way that that is referring to me, right? That man in the mirror type of thing, that self. What am I bringing into any aspect of who I'm relating to in the external? And this is a big topic, and I've done a lot of work to understand it. I just didn't arrive to that conclusion. When I sat to bring up what about relationships as mirror was important for me to talk about, I went back to the understanding of I was a flawed being. My relationships stemmed from that flawed, disconnected self. And yeah, I was expecting different, right? If someone says they love me, I'm expecting for me to feel loved, to feel taken care of. That idea of rose colored glasses, right? But what if I found out was true for me is that I couldn't have that if my approach was stemming from wounding, trauma. I wasn't approaching a relationship whole. I was approaching it where I was at with myself. So, reflecting back through my timeline and what I've lived through offer me a nice glimpse of how far I've come. I wasn't always this put together person. I didn't show up 100% with my own needs met in a relationship and any kind of relationship. I didn't show up with my needs met. I was looking for that external fulfillment, for that external validation, external, yes, I got you, I love you feeling, filling up the emptiness within myself. And in understanding that I was coming from already a flawed perspective, it illuminated the why the relationships fell apart and where I was being a detriment to those relationships, you know? But oftentimes when we hear people talk about relationships as mirrors, we fail to address the very first relationship that you have, and is that is with the self. And it wasn't until I addressed the needs for my own self first. What do I need? How am I coming in? Am I feeling sad? Then I know I have that filter. Okay, I'm sad today, so I cannot put it on my partner to be my everything. I'm experiencing sadness. Therefore, there's going to be a tinge of sadness in the air for me. It allowed me to understand what I needed before approaching whatever interaction I was going to have. I wanted myself to see myself, where am I at, check my frequency, check where my thoughts were before I went out there. So the idea of relationships as mirrors only came to me very recently. In 2023, after that whole awakening journey, I met who's now my husband, and my guides, specifically the guidance was always take it back to yourself. If there's a discomfort, take it back to yourself. So I didn't have this whole prior understanding of mirrors in relationships or the external prior to that, because I was dealing with all the other traumas that you process in life. I don't think we think about how you show up for yourself, or do you show up as yourself often enough. So you just expect that, right? It's one of those things. Oh, if I have a partner, they should show up for me and fill my needs and fulfill my life. So it's recent, and it's the core of my where I'm working at right now, because I'm here with my husband on the everyday, and it allows for what needs to still be healed and addressed to come up naturally. So it has been very recent. It wasn't something that I carried for a long time.
Yeah, and when you say cup to fill up, and when you ask these questions, like who's going to fill this up, right? And you feel empty within yourself. And I always say this, especially being in the healthcare system, caregiving for someone. It's like you cannot give anyone what you don't have. So if you don't have love, you don't know what it means to love or feel the love. There's no way that you can give that back. Same thing with everything. If you don't have acceptance, you don't know how it looks like. You don't, any of this. It's like you have to know. And how many times we keep changing our minds. So when we talk about this, and I'm just in general women, right? we want love, and we have this image because we've watched these movies and we've fantasized it. We've read stories of Cinderella and how a prince is supposed to be, and you want all that in your life. Of course, who doesn't, right? You want all the sparkles and light and everything in it. And rightfully so, we all deserve that. But we, again, ask for it from external because we still don't know how it looks. Once we get it, we're like, I know I asked for it, but I don't like it, right? That's where you
Yeah.
always do trial and error at things. That's how you're going to know, like, no, this is not what suits me. This doesn't resonate with me. So it is all, so how is the other person going to know what you're going to like? And so that's where that whole satisfaction and contentment comes in too. It's like some people are never satisfied no matter what I do or how much I give, and or they're never content with anything. But because they don't know what they want. And when I looked at and even heard that song, not only am I looking at myself, and then I bring that mirror in every situation and I put it in front of me, so to speak. What is my tone when I'm talking to this person in most of the relationship, especially closed one? How am I coming into this relationship with what mental, emotional, physical capacity right now in this moment? Because it shifts depending on what's going on during the day. How is my gesture? How is my body language? What are some of the words that I'm speaking? Because believe me, just a few days ago, this came to mind that words, they say words, pen can be a sword, used as a sword. So words can be weapons of mass destruction, or it could be a peace bringer in the world. How do you want to use it? What kind of words do you want to use? And then I'm not saying that you need to tiptoe around things. You want to be real, but yet you want to be firm and use it. So I kind of brought that a lot. Yes, people say, oh, you're analyzing too much, you're thinking too much into it. But it has really served me in terms of how to move forward, whether I want to move forward with the relationship, whether it's serving me for my best. So not only going internal, but it kind of reflected out into my surrounding. I am here because I want to be here. I'm interacting with you because I want to interact with you. And I'm showing my 100% in this relationship. And it could be anything, it doesn't have to be just romantic, but in that terms.
That's beautiful. I certainly didn't start out like that. The mirror work was not pleasant
Mm,
because you don't want to look at yourself often. And what happens after you wake up? Nothing but looking to yourself for
yeah.
yourself because you need to. So the internal machinery starts questioning everything you've ever done, everything you've lived through, relationships you have had in any capacity of a relationship. And you only have that mirror work to go from. And I'm not referring, I know there's work out there called
Mm,
that. I haven't read it. So I'm
mm,
literally referencing a mirror and shifting it to see myself through the eyes of another.
mm.
So that's what I'm referring to. But like that internal deconstruction of how I had shown up in my adult life in relationships was big for me. Up until that moment, which we met 2022, I had a string of failed relationships. And I honor those relationships. They taught me so much about myself and my journey and allowed me to sit with what I had been bringing into these relationships and what my expectations of the other person were. And they completely didn't match up. I wanted a specific outcome. I needed a specific thing to feel loved, fulfilled, seen, validated, cared for. But I was never present. I didn't know myself. And since, like you said, I didn't know myself, how can I bring myself into a relationship where I am not in? It was a performance of relationship, what I had grown up to see, believe, feel like a relationship should function as. It was based on the external giving me that feedback, but never the internal aspect of myself asking, who is Sheila? What is her love language? How does she show up? What does she value? And I wasn't going to feel ready enough to tackle until 2022, because once he came into my life, it forced me to address things that up until that moment in my awakening had been crumbling. So it took a while. It takes every day still. It's not something I've mastered. I work at a relationship constantly. It didn't look pretty. It doesn't feel good. I had to be really honest with who I was. And the moments where there was a period of isolation in my life, I honor that space. It allowed me to question who I was and what I needed, and to learn to first give that to myself. I still do it till today. It's something that I don't think is going to fall off. We have different relationships with different people. And for me, it's always going back to, what do I need and how do I feel? At the beginning of the morning, the first thing I do is pray. After that prayer, what do I do? Tap into my body. What am I feeling? Did I feel like I rested? It's just taking a beat, taking 5 minutes to identify any running patterns, emotions, fears, anything that's coming up in your head. Because I was having some dreams and waking up angry at my husband, like, you talked to this girl in my dream, therefore you're in trouble now, you know? So it seems silly, but for him it was a big deal that the first interaction he had with me in the day, I was already mad at him, and we just woke up, you know? So it allowed me to see that I needed to take a breath. I open my eyes, I pray, and then I tune in. Where am I? Oh no, that was a dream. I don't need to be angry at him for my dream, right? And what that does for our relationship is it gives me perspective. And in that perspective, our relationship can breathe. I don't approach him to fulfill anything. I already know if I woke up lacking something, and I look to fulfill it within myself. And that's really beautiful and difficult work at the same time. But what happens when a trigger comes in and you're just in the middle of your day, going about, you already assessed yourself, you're feeling X, Y, and Z type of way, and out of the blue, something comes in and is storing data? A little trigger here. What does working around triggers in relationship and mirror work, how does that look like for you, Hemali?
I was just thinking when you were talking about husband and everything, when we got married, to see that, and we dated 5 years, right? And you think that you know everything by then, but then to realize or come to a conclusion that things are like, we are total opposite, like literally mirror the reflection. And so day and night, he likes something and I like totally opposite at most of the things. And I was like, how is this going to work? And we both are strong personality, like alphas. Like, holy S, how is this going to work? And you just kind of tiptoe around it. Either you blow up, and that's where I will talk about my blowing up. And people say, seriously, some of my friends and my few family people, when I tell them this story of my blow up, and some of you have seen that, they don't believe it. But as quiet as I was, I would store everything in my body. I would not say a word, but something like the everything has to fill up, like the water has to fill up all the way, like go beyond my head space. And then if somebody says one word and a trigger where I blow up, and that blowing up, I am shaking, I am yelling, I am screaming, and I'm telling people off whatever has been hidden in my heart, my body, my soul. It's like emptying all that water that has been stored from toe to my head. And those were my reaction. And it would only happen, of course, around loved family members, loved ones, the closest ones that have
Hmm.
seen me flipping out. and that anger that was built in. And that I wanted to stop. And that's how the journey had begun in terms of healing myself. The anger that was, where did it come from? Who knows? But we know. But saying that, that was my reaction. That's how I would react. And so I was learning how to respond. And I've done it in front of my kids, but it was just getting to a point where, how do I change this? Why am I reacting this way? And that was the most important question. What is it? And then I would also do, I had read it somewhere, and I would do this meditation where you look through eagle's eye, where you close your eyes, and just like eagle is so high above but can look down all the way for a prey, the same thing. So I would ask for, the intention would be to ask for, what is it that, where's the root cause? What is the root cause of this? Where is it coming from? What is not met? How am I feeling? What am I feeling around this? Either it was a word, or it was just that I was tired. I was overwhelmed. And that's what was happening a lot too. When I take on a lot, and I used to get overwhelmed, stressed, and I'm taking on everybody else's responsibility. And that's when things would just blow up. So, really looking into it. And when you were talking about mirror work, I have done that to start out with, where Louise Hay's mirror work, looking into the eye and really looking at your eyes, into your soul. They say eyes are windows to your soul. And when we look in the mirror, we kind of just look at surface level. We never look in our eyes. Try looking in your eyes and talking to yourself like you are talking to your soul. And at times, especially when I'm brushing, I've done that. And at times, I've had my 5-year-old show up there. And all of a sudden, I'm just like bawling right there while brushing. Nothing as, but that coming, what was coming up is that pain within us. And in every relationship, we bring those pain. We all are wounded, and we all have some kind of trauma. And as a kid, it may be small, but then it magnifies because we are children. We don't know how to process it. And we bring that along our every interaction into our adulthood. And sometimes that one word can really bring you back to that 5-year-old, back to that 10-year-old, and almost like you're feeling what you felt when you were that, in that moment.
Yeah. Looking into mirrors is brave for people. I don't like mirrors.
Yeah.
I have no mirrors anywhere in my house. There's a little tiny mirror, very narrow. My whole face doesn't fit in it. And that's the only mirror in the entire house.
Wow.
I don't like them. And I don't know, it's just I don't have a need to go constantly looking. But I've always felt since I was little like that there's depth to mirrors that I don't want to go there. I don't need to. Whatever. So nice little tidbit. I don't like mirrors.
It's like Portal, right? The movie show, it's
Exactly.
a portal. You
And
can
no,
go
let's not
in.
even really no go there because it's something I cannot. I'm not in fear of. I
Mm,
just don't even. I couldn't. And understanding my limits is part of knowing myself,
yeah.
right? And that's a big limit for me. But how then do I do what we're calling right now work with myself, looking into my own self? I use my mind. I've mentioned a lot that I love my mind and I love to live within it. It's not a line, it's true. You have to pry me away from my own mind. And I would sit with the same questioning. Why is this affecting me so much, especially around triggers? What does it have to teach me? But that awareness didn't come right away. You would experience me in full anger. And one of the biggest things this work brought to me, and it brought a lot of big things, is the understanding of my dad used to call me or say that I was a difficult person. And I used to be so offended by that. What do you mean I'm a difficult person? I am transparent. I say exactly what I mean, exactly how I mean to say it, and all of these things. And I couldn't see why he said I was difficult. And it wounded me, which is why I reacted. There was no response. He would say it and I reacted at it because I felt hurt. It wasn't until last year, gosh, where I turn around to my husband and I go, my God, my dad was right. I am a difficult person. I am a difficult person. And I came to the realization of that because even though I say what I say and I mean what I say, particulars have to be met, right? It has to be my way. And I don't know if that's because I'm a Virgo. I don't know if because that's what I like the things the way I like them. And as long as the things are the way I say they should be, I'm easygoing. But when they're not that way, I am I am a difficult person. Yes, I am. I own that fully. So I appreciate this process of investigating what travels beneath the surface. How could I come into a relationship and feel whole and seen and loved when I wasn't feeling that for my own self? I was fractured. So many things had happened throughout my life that I felt like I had left versions of me depending on those ages. And I didn't know how to bring that in. It took, and to go back to why I wanted to share this, it took mental visualization of me picturing myself at those ages and bringing them back into my heart and say, what do you need from me? And literally talk to my 8-year old, 9-year old, every age where there's big trauma for me, and bring them in close and say, I'm here and I can hold the space. I am old enough. Allowance of anger, fear, rejection, allowing those ages to tell me everything they had to tell me and holding them wholly as if they were my child. Sometimes we struggle to, how are we going to do this? Just pretend that you're parenting your child. Or if you don't have a child yet, pretend you are giving advice to your best friend. Hold someone that you know and love dearly in that space, but see yourself in the ages that you were when you felt fractalized or traumatized to the extent of full separation. And that's what had happened for me. I had all these fractalized versions of Sheila that didn't get to come home fully until mid 2023. Work was around acceptance, and learning not to point outward and not say, this happened to me, you did this to me, this is happening because of these circumstances, but rather turn that finger, that outward point, and turn it inward. What does this have for me? What is my lesson here? Why does it keep coming up for me? You would see a string of the same type of failed relationship or friendships, and the theme was always around abandonment. I would cry at the end of these relationships, grieve them, and say, why do I keep being abandoned over and over again? And at one point, after working so much into bringing myself to wholeness, I heard, because you keep abandoning yourself. And if you continue, you're going to continue to experience the lesson because the universe works in that way. Yeah. What lesson do you need to learn? And I will continue to show it to you until you've learned it. Then, after hearing, because you keep abandoning yourself, I said, how do I stop? And it's in the small moments when we say yes to everything that we abandon ourselves. When we don't know how to put boundaries in relationships, when we don't know what it is that we need, and voice that. Because we can know what we need, but if we never voice that out loud, we're never going to really allow the other person to honor that, right? And that's the big work, is understanding, why was I leaving myself and how? And up until what point am I in a performance of a role or a label, or fully feeling the connection with the person? If I, for example, say, you're my friend, am I showing up in friendship, in the true meaning, essence of the word friendship? When I say I love you, I mean that, or I won't say it. And all of those things, all those understandings, awareness, perspectives, all of that came from figuring out who I am for myself first. And this is why right now I can say this is the healthiest romantic relationship I've ever been in. I'm in the greatest space of my life when it comes to communicating with people because I meet my needs first. And then I externalize my essence from that wholeness. It's not easy work, but it's needed work, especially if you want to stop repeating cycles over and over again without stopping to question them. Everything that I've gone through, every trigger, every trauma, every single thing, every pain, every wound, I understand now that it was always a gift. I was always meant to see what was truly hiding under those dark spaces. And I don't think I would be where I am now if I hadn't taken the time to hibernate and be in the deep isolation of the awakening and to really stop feeling afraid to ask myself the tough questions because there's fear there and really sit with the answers.
Big fears and repeating patterns, like how many times. And I had to learn that hard way. Same situation constantly keeps happening with different people. What is it? What is it that I need to learn from them? And one of them was, inaction is also an action. Speak up, stand up, and as simple as, but not so that you fight and react. I always say that come with that firmness, but at the same time with a loving tone. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be um, impactful if you're loud and clear and come with strength. It can be impactful with gentleness and still be able to put your point forward and tell people back off. For example, when kids were little, this little, kids fight, they get better in schools, and but when the parents start getting involved, and I'm like, I am, at the time it was like 45-year-old or 40-year-old, and these are like 8 9-year-old girls. They're gonna fight and come back. Let them solve their issues. But then moms start getting involved, and I was like, I'm not gonna go low to 8 9-year-old mentality or a 15-year-old mentality. But then they keep probing you and prodding you and wanting reaction from you. And so at some point, I had to stand up for myself, for my daughter, to show her that you can show up for yourself. You can stand up for yourself. How to create healthy boundaries. What it means if somebody crosses the boundary. How does it look like? And how does it feel like? And it's okay to put yourself first, right?
Yeah,
Because it's so
absolutely.
important. And so that was the hardest lesson. It's like, I kind of let it go, let it go. It's okay. This will pass too. I don't want to say I'm too quiet, or you don't want any confrontation. The other person is too aggressive, too out there, and you just shy away. You just take it as it is. But then at some point, you have to say something. And it's just not outside, it could be in the family. I don't like this. I don't like you talking to me like that. I don't like, or even respect, demanding love, demanding acceptance, demanding validation. I mean, is it going to sit well? No. If you're demanding something, but then these things go both ways, right? And so to really see, are you demanding or are you showing them? For me, I remember 2015, as we talk about in many episodes, the whole life changing events where seeing the hatred for you in someone, and yet I'm demanding respect. But then I had to, it's like in that moment of realization where, wait, all these years, I have never shown them what it means and how to respect me. I have allowed them to walk all over me, so they don't know. They think it's okay, right? They're going to take whatever you give them. And so start learning what respect means to you, and to respect yourself first before you ask anyone else to respect you. So that was one of my greatest lesson in that moment. And when you say, these painful, dark moments have changed my life, not only they were painful, but they were profound and expansive, because I went deeper into knowing who I am, what I stand for, what I don't stand for, what I allow and what I don't allow, what I love and what I don't love. So it was that greatest moment of realization, moving deeper into these, what the people show, how they act in front of you, what it is, and what is going on within me while I see what's happening outside of me.
Yeah, absolutely. That is big to learn to know what those things mean to you. Respect, what does that mean to you? Because we all have perspectives and we all have ideas. And if there are 3,000 billion humans, that's as many perspectives everyone's going to have. And when you were speaking about holding back your anger, it brought up for me that even throughout this work, there are times when I really feel a trigger come up where I can't hold my anger. And how that's different from before, what has changed that pattern of lashing out is I could see periods of my life when I was in my teens, my late teens, when I would lash out to draw blood. And I was very much like you, very calm, quiet in appearance, very you don't hear me say a peep, and things would mount up in the background, and I had knots in my throat and couldn't speak up for myself. So when the last drop hit, I would completely lash out, and I would lash out to injure and leave with that feeling of I did it, I said what I need to say, I don't care who it hurt, I'm walking away. This happened because they were looking for it. When I felt enough anger that I've lashed out in the last, I don't know when the last time I did that was, a few months ago maybe. What I recognize the shift has been is I'm not out to draw blood. I'm not out to injure. I'm just speaking from pain. So I will lash out and immediately retrieve. I'll go back into myself, take time to know what is the real story underneath here. Why was I triggered? And I'll go back to the person and fully apologize. And that's what didn't happen before. I would cause pain, lash out in anger, and not care about how and who it hurt. Now, in the random times it happens, I pull away, learn from it, and go back. And I let whatever needs to be said be said. Almost never happen anymore because before any conversation, any disagreement, anything that's being brought up and doesn't feel comfortable or safe or whatever the case might be, I sit beforehand. What is in this situation for me? What am I not seeing? What is the olive branch? And how do I bridge in conversation healing? I always want to approach any relationship I have now, whether it's going smoothly or not, with transparency and saying, this is how I felt, this is what I saw, and this is how we move forward. And there's a very thin thread going from, am I reacting or am I responding? Right? And how do you differentiate whether or not something is a reaction and something is in fact a response? And the way I've learned to navigate these two concepts and words is to how am I? How am I breathing? Am I barely breathing? Because I'm reacting then. Is my heart racing? Am I barely breathing? Am I defensive? Am I defending an argument that I want the other person to see? Because when you're responding, none of those things are true. Your body stays in calm. Your reaction is calm, even when it's louder. There's an inner feeling of calmness. And when I'm reacting, I never think about the person's feelings. When I am responding, I'm always trying to see their perspective. And that's the biggest difference of how I can navigate whether I'm in a reactive situation or I'm responding. We don't talk about that enough in spiritual circles, about how the things you don't heal will continue to come up until you've healed them. So the anger doesn't just go away. The triggers don't just dissolve because you've touched the 5D. and Jesus has walked into your heart, like was my case, there needs to be a conscious awareness running underneath what you say, what you do, how you show up around the things that you carry in order for you to show up in relationship to other people in a healed way. So even though looking in a mirror is difficult, whether that is a physical mirror or a visualized mirror, if you don't do that, you will never heal that. It will always be a cyclical experience of here I am again in the same situation with the same or different person, because you haven't taken the time to bring light into what is within it for you.
It's like doing the same thing but wanting a different outcome.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. You have to do something about it. You have to make some change, no matter how scary it is, how it makes you feel. And I've seen that so many times. And I think this is where it's like a storm, a tornado. Sometimes I see it. It's like you go through that, and then you're in the eye of the storm a little bit, there's calmness, and then you have to walk out. That's the only way out. But sometimes people walk back because that feels comfortable, because that feels normal. Not everybody does this work. It is so easy to blame everybody else. It is so easy to point fingers at outside other people and use words that are so hurtful and painful. But yet you demand respect, and you don't think it's anything wrong in you using those very nasty words. I don't know how else to put that. But so it's very important to really see for what it is, the truth. And I think the only way that you can get to your true authenticity, to your true self, is through working through these mirrors, working through these relationships. There's also one very important thing, maybe, I've heard a lot of people say, but I did so much for this person. I gave them all. I gave them everything, but now they're turned around and they don't even talk to us, or they moved on. They're talking to someone else. And for me, I feel that, and I've processed that personally. I give because this is who I am. This is what brings me joy in that moment. And I am not expecting anything back from you. Because again, it's an expectation, right? Because I've given you, what would you like from me? I've really given my full appreciation. I am really grateful to you for the amount of stuff you've given me. But what else would you like me to do? Right? And that answer, even I don't know the answer. Like, how much is enough for what you've given, right? No, exactly. And perspective. It's like you may think that you've given your whole world, but the other person may think that that is just part of the world. And when I feel like, oh, I may, introduce them to this set of friends, and all of a sudden I am not friends with any of them and they're friends. And it's like, great, you made these connections, amazing connections with friends. And now you're supposed to experience something else, because now there is this amazing space left to invite people that are vibrating at your frequency, that are going to bring you, right? It's like you gave someone something, you didn't expect anything. Now there is someone else coming into that space to give you. It doesn't have to be from that person, it could be someone else. It's coming from the universe, no matter what, right? I don't know. That's how I look at it with that perspective. It's like it is so easy to blame someone else outside of you than really look into within yourself and what you say, how you react, how you walk in the world, how your interactions are.
And that brings up a very big thing, that relationships are about accountability, self knowledge, intention, and then you turn into that mirror for other people. I believe fully that after you've done so much work and have integrated so much about yourself, you become the mirror for others. And the universe and your external will always mirror what needs to be addressed or brought to light for you. But you also do that for other people. So once you've had a good amount of practice and you feel like, okay, I've been a really angry, difficult person. Let me check myself at the
Mm-hmm.
door. So then, what's your intention with the interaction? And what I'm trying to get to is overgivers will often feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
I gave and I gave and I gave and I didn't get anything in return. But that's because you didn't give anything to yourself. Everything was external. You overgave to someone trying to fill that void that we talked about earlier, that your own soul is saying, take care of me. And so intention is important here. Why am I doing the things I am doing? Always understanding that you've now also a mirror for that person. When we enter a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a partnership, or romantic, the other person is coming with their own set of trauma and unhealed wounds and all of these things. Right? So you shouldn't have an expectation that they're a clean slate just because they're your friend, they're your husband. It doesn't matter. They're their own individual person who has gone through their own individual experiences and who deserves time and space to heal. And when I relate to my husband all of the time, that understanding is within me. I approach the relationship from my healed perspective up until the amount of healing I've done around something. And he approaches it from his own understanding. What I try to embody the most is this process of self awareness, self investigation for him. So I will model that. If we have an argument and I've retreated to my space to find out what happened, I will disclose that to him. I will say, and when this happened, this is how I felt it in my body, and it brought up such and such time frame from my childhood. So when you were saying that, I wasn't hearing you. I was in that space of time,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I was feeling hurt or sad or upset. But it wasn't you. I can see that now. So that I am out loud letting him know what my process is. So maybe if there's ever a need for him to go through his own self process, he can grab an example out of that. So I try to be very vocal around what goes through my mind, my feelings, my traumas, not intentionally hurting him, just bringing them out into the open as soon as I have the understanding for myself. I don't always have the ability to have a live dropping
Mm-hmm.
of, ta-da, you're doing this because you're being two again, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't always happen. It's ridiculous to expect that. But what ends up happening is I'll retrieve, think about everything, and then reconnect. And learning to pull away from situations that don't serve me has been very helpful because it always gives me perspective. And when I get that perspective, I now have an awareness that I didn't have before, and I can communicate clearly, openly, and with the hopes of having a bridge to healing with whoever I'm speaking with. It's not only, or I should say, it's not always about what you receive in the external that mirrors, but you also mirror constantly. You mirror your processes, you mirror your healing, you mirror your trauma, you mirror your wounds. And all of that is also being received by another human being across from you. So, what I've learned throughout the whole entire process is that we have to take accountability for our actions. We have to take inventory of where we're at with our healing process, take responsibility for when we haven't shown up as the most transparent aspect of who we are, the most loving version of who we are, and realize that just as we've been hurt, we've hurt other people. And as long as we don't take time to see ourselves for the truth of who we are in its rawest version, we will always continue to hurt people. That is what mirror work is for me.
That's beautiful.
If there's one thing to sit with from today, every relationship in your life is reflecting something back at you, not for blame, not for judgment, but for awareness. The question isn't, why are they doing this to me? It's, what is this showing me about myself? And the thing that keeps showing up, the pattern, the trigger, the wound, it will keep coming up until you look at it. Meet yourself first. Know what you need before you ask anyone else to fill it. Because you can't give what you don't have, and you can't receive what you've never given yourself. Thank you for being here with us. If this episode moves something within you, please share with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you're listening and leave a review. It helps more people find this space. Find us on all your favorite social media platforms. And remember, you already are what you're looking for. Trust your insight, act with purpose, and stay in your knowing.
Everything I held, it was always there, always there, always there.